I'm resident of Collinwood, Joel Sage, joined by my buddy Patrick McCray, author of the Dark Shadows Day Book About. We're here to continue our discussion of 1841 Parallel Time, episode 1233. John Carlin narrates this episode. So, Patrick, what did you think, buddy?
I thought it was a delight. This episode is, I tell you, Roger Ebert once said, I'll have a ham sandwich more than once. But he also said, I believe quoting someone else, that no great movie is ever truly depressing.
Yeah.
But every bad one is.
Right.
And this is really great. As heavy and as just deeply mournful, I mean, deeply authentically sad, beyond melancholy, just really sitting with its sadness like an inescapable August heat that you decide to just capitulate to and experience rather than fight. That's this episode. This is one of the saddest Dark Shadows episodes I've ever seen, and it's a real revelation in that sense, because it makes you remember that there is a difference in theater and in film storytelling between melodrama and something that's supposed to be sad because we've told it's been sad, and then a truly well-earned deep sadness. And that's what this is. This is characters too realistic, too mature, and too grown up to really hurl recriminations at each other.
Yeah.
And so they just live with it. And it has some of the most relatable caretaking deathbed sequences possible. And boy, does Frid get to do a great job. Laura Parker's good too. But Jonathan Frid shows the incredibly hard work that goes into pure, truthful simplicity. And that's what he achieves. There are so many ways from a performance point of view that these scenes could go wrong. Yeah. That they could just be way too heavy, way too acted, and instead it's just clean. It's just so clean. And yet, from a script point of view, story does an interesting thing. One of the things to look at in Dark Shadows is, in any episode, because they only have about 5 actors per episode, pairs of couples.
Yeah.
Where you have, and it doesn't have to be a romantic couple. It's just, okay, we're going to follow what happens to these two characters. We're going to follow what happens to these two characters. And let's juxtapose them. Let's put them against each other and see what happens. And so, as, Jonathan Frid and Laura Parker, and occasionally Daphne Harridge, are dealing with Daphne's death and the pain they don't want to cause her, and just really getting comfortable with their hopelessness, which is a fascinating thing. At the same time, you have Kendrick and Melanie, who are really, 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 I guess it's Kendrick and Carrie with the Melanie. They're really pushing ahead to solve this problem and to have their romance despite real impediments. Not, I don't want to say that the others are dealing with made up impediments, but so and so loved such and such, and they actually were supposed to be with so and so, and they're real mad now because they've done. I mean, that's all real sad, but that's all stuff they kind of chose. But what Melanie's dealing with, she didn't. And that Kendrick is there pushing past that anyway is terrific. And so much of the dialogue that Kendrick has with the uncomfortably maturing Carrie Stokes is just dying to be taken out of context. Tons of my father didn't want me to be here. Oh, don't tell my father I'm here. And it's for anyone who was single when they were a teenager, that's really some of the most terrifying words ever spoken on Dark Shadows.
A bit. To your point too, with the whole, they would follow two characters around, and you would build off those two. You would follow them and see where their story was leading, or what. Or
and then compare the two sets of characters to each other as the episode goes on.
Right. In the very beginning, you'll see Victoria and Burke. Then later on, you'll see Victoria, Maggie, Burke, Wilbur Strake. You'll see, Roger, Liz. You'll see different characters interact with each other. It's not necessarily a romantic reaction like you're talking, like you just pointed out. It's different characters interacting and how they all interact with different characters.
Yeah, that's more of a they call it a rondo, where you have different elements that are kind of spinning off against each other. With this, it's a later pattern. It didn't take them long to get into that, but it's where really you've got one story and it's going to be Roger and David, and you've got another story and it's going to be Harry Johnson and Aristide in an episode, and we put what are they up to and what are these guys up to, how do they reflect each other as the show goes on? Because sure, they'll fractalize and split off. It's really interesting when you really have those two different stories. I'm just enjoying doing these hand gestures with the camera at that angle. When you have that dynamic going on.
Yeah, I really like how, again, 1841 is very adult. It's very mature and grown up in every way. And this episode continues that trend and that theme when you're dealing with the upcoming potential death of Daphne Heritage Collins. And her death was prophesized way, way back when Carrie prophesied that if she'd marry Bramwell, she would die. But there's a lot to this episode, too, when you look at the underlying tones. We've talked about how the room has impacted everybody who lives in the house. This in every way, I think Daphne's upcoming death, because she will, spoiler alert, she will die. Not in this episode, though. But to sort of touch upon this, I think this is in every way to get Catherine to believe in the power of the room, kill her sister, because she's been a doubting Thomas this biggest part. And why, you might say, well, why would the room, for those who don't know, who've never watched 1841 Parallel Time, well, why would a cursed room kill her sister? Well, because when she drew the lottery, her husband chose to go in for her place. So this is her penance. You didn't go in, your sister gets the axe. And not literally, but she gets sick and dies. And you're right. The acting of Kate Jackson, of Jonathan Frid, of Laura Parker is it's gold. It's pure
gold. It's really exquisite. When we've talked a lot about the soap operation nature and of this storyline, and I'll be honest with you, I feel like when I'm talking about that, I'm indulging in some euphemism. I mean, it's okay, but it's you realize how limited it is dramatically, and kind of how immature some of it is dramatically when you get to this episode.
Yeah,
and it's so rich yet elegant.
Yeah,
that's a hell of a feat.
Yeah, and I think too, when you look at the upcoming death, this episode hits him just even harder because Catherine is crying, and what's Bramwell's words to her? He says, don't let her know, that she's dying because the doctor said there's no hope, and he tells Catherine that he's going to get a doctor from Boston, a better doctor because his ship has come in. He has all this money.
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really love the split end where we get Melanie and Kendrick, and they're, like you said, they're moving forward with the story of finding Melanie's lineage. Who's her father? Who's her mother? We find out that her father has died, and that her mother oversaw the coffin, and her mother is alive. So, really great tease by the writers here. It doesn't. None of these episodes feel like filler. None of them, and that's what I love what the writers did with it.
There is substance and story moving forward every episode, and it's kind of new to Dark Shadows. It's designed to be filler. So much of it was designed for distracted people, homemakers, especially at the time of day that it was on, because the kids were coming home from school. Their husband was, rolling up their sleeves to have a long day at happy hour to come home and do something reprehensible to the family. So they had a lot of terror to deal with anyway, and so it was designed so that you could see it once a week, or you could see it every day but only see about a third of it, and it would still all make sense, kind of like the news. But in this case, and I ranted and raved about this before, so let me do it again. Dark Shadows fans of a certain vocal quality at a certain period of time famously liked to complain, "Oh, you had to watch it every day. Oh, how horrible. I couldn't keep up with it." And I mean, genuine fans don't do that, but we've all heard those cavils. And they don't have a mustache. So yeah, you do have to watch it every day. What's wrong with that?
Yeah. Well, I think now too, back then there wasn't streaming services and stuff, and I understand all that because my mother used to explain to me like how different things were when she was growing up to suppose to when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, because when the internet was starting to really come around, she was saying this to me. She goes, when she was before the internet was in its full function, she had run a video store, and she said one day
Joey just lost you.
Huh?
Did it happen again? Oh, for God's sake! I don't know which of us is being recorded right now.
We both are.